I am the meanest mom on the planet.
You horrible person, you.
I am.
Uh-oh.
Because I'm constantly telling my 14-year-old to work smarter, not harder. And
You are a
instead,
horrible mother.
I know. I mean, why would
Oh,
I do such an
why
awful
would
thing like
you
teach him that?
engage your brain?
I mean, like when you have to leave, it's way better to take 15 trips to your room
Yep.
to get everything you need than
Yep.
it would be to like stop and take a breath
Well,
and
that
figure
way
out what you
that,
need before you leave the room.
you just go on what comes to mind. And if you're not prepared by the time you get to where you're going, then it's not your fault. You can blame it on everything else.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
This episode, we're going to talk about how to work smarter, not harder, to get things done and actually be able to be productive even more than what you thought possible.
So one of the biggest things that I get asked all the time with my clients in my Facebook groups is I just can't manage to keep track of everything I need to do, and how do I get to the end of my day and I log in on my food and I'm way far off of my goals. And I have said it every day probably for the last 3 years at least, but probably longer, to everyone under the sun. And it is just, you've got to plan ahead.
Yeah.
You have to plan ahead, just like my 14-year-old needs to plan ahead before he leaves his bedroom to figure out where he's going and what he's doing, what he might need to take with him. So do you. You got to plan ahead. Where are you going? What are you going to do today, tomorrow?
But
What
I don't know where I'm going.
Listen, we are all adults here.
Yes.
And we are not just bobbing around in the ocean, waiting to see which wave takes us what way. I mean, maybe that would be nice to go back to being like 20 and unattached and just kind of going wherever the wind blows you. But I feel like most of us are not in that position anymore.
No.
Most of us have a schedule that's at least 2 weeks out. And if you want us to squeeze something in, you better let us know, because it's not going to happen unless it gets put on that schedule.
Yes.
The problem is we don't put ourselves on that schedule, and we don't put our health and fitness on that schedule. We put carpool, we put gymnastics, we put football, we put all these things, dentist appointments on that schedule. But what we don't put on that schedule is when we're going to work out, when we're going to prep our food, when we're going to cook dinner, when we're going to grocery shop. And then we get to the end of the day and we're like,
I didn't get anything done.
Yep.
Not the stuff that really mattered anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've been busting your butt and working really hard, but you're not working smart.
Exactly.
You've got to be smart about it. So
one of a story that really drove home this point to me was when I was, my grandfather-in-law wanted to go to college and wanted to get a good education, and he knew exactly what he wanted to do by the time he got to college. And so he had a very direct course that he wanted to take. Well, the college said, well, no, you have to take your generals and you have to be able to take this. And he said, well, I don't want to take those classes. I know exactly what I want to do. Let me take these classes. And they said, no, I'm sorry, that's not the way that works. And so he said, okay, fine. I'm going to sit down with all of the syllabuses, whatever.
I think you're right.
Each syllabus in every class. And for the classes that I don't want to take, I am just going to figure out what I need to do as the bare minimum to get a passing grade in the class. And then for the time that I don't spend on getting straight A's, now I'm the straight A student. So I heard the story and I was like, how dare you like be fine with a C in this class? But he said, for the time that it would have taken me to worry about getting an A in this class is time that I would rather be spending doing what I want to do. So for the classes that he didn't want to take, he was okay getting a C. He did the bare minimum to pass that class. So for the 70% of the time that he was spending on this class, he was then able to use that time, that the extra 30%, and invest it into the stuff that he actually really wanted to do. And I thought, okay, that's what it means.
Smart strategy
to work smarter, but not harder. He passed his classes. He graduated in the same amount of time, but he focused and emphasized in everything that he wanted to, but he still got everything done that he needed to
Yeah.
get done.
Yeah.
So, I mean, first of all, we have to be able to eliminate the things that we don't need to do. It's not like
Right.
he was adding extra courses
Right.
just because I can.
Right.
He eliminated everything that he didn't need to do. But then within those parameters of everything that he did need to do, he worked smarter, not harder. So he worked only a little bit in this area over here and a whole lot
I like
over
that.
here.
Mm-hmm.
But he prioritized what he wanted to do. So have you ever seen that visual aid where you take a jar and you try to fill it with sand and then with pebbles and then with big rocks?
Yeah.
It doesn't fit. By the time you get to the big rocks, the whole jar is so full of sand and pebbles
Right.
that those big rocks
Right.
aren't going to fit.
Right.
But if you put the big rocks in first, and they're only typically like 2 or 3,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 4,
Mm-hmm.
and then you put in the pebbles and they shake down around it, and then you put in the sand,
Yeah.
all of it fits in
Mm-hmm.
that jar.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you need to do is figure out what those
What are the
priorities
big
are.
rocks?
What am I working
Yeah.
on the most? This is my priority. It's going to be figuring out when I go to the gym. It's going to be meal prepping. It's going to be, actually spending that meal with my
Right.
family
Right.
so I can boost that relationship. Those are my 3 rocks.
That's a really
And then
easy
everything
way
else
to
can
kind
go
of
in.
think of, when you look at your to-do list, for
Mhm.
example, or your schedule, and you're like, holy cow, this is very overwhelming.
Yes.
If you can look at it and put it in those terms, what are the big rocks? What are the medium rocks? And what's the sand that can kind of be sprinkled to fill in?
Absolutely.
I mean, I've talked about, being productive in the carpool line while you're sitting to wait, or if you get somewhere early and you've got 20 minutes to kill, using that 20 minutes productively instead of just scrolling through Facebook because you weren't prepared for that 20
I didn't
minutes.
know what else to do.
Yeah.
So instead do a live or do
Right.
homework, balance your, go check on all your bank statements and
Yeah.
your e-currency. I mean, do something productive in that time.
Yeah.
So you're not just
So I've
scrolling.
got there's 3 kind of main areas that I really like to focus on with my clients and my people to work smarter and not harder. And one of them, the main one, is in the gym. And I like to say it's not the time in the gym, it's the time in the gym, because it's not a matter of, if I just walk in the gym and I spend 90 minutes every day, I'm going to reach my goal. It's what you're doing with that 90 minutes. And maybe you don't need 90, maybe you need 45 if you use it efficiently and effectively. So just like the big rocks thing that we were talking about, what are your big rocks of your workout? What are your big rocks that you need to make sure that you hit those milestones and those movements or whatever it is so that you can reach your goal? The rest of it, sprinkle it in and around. And if you run out of time, you don't get to it, The second area is meal prep. There's a couple of schools of thought on meal prep. And I'm not married to either one, but I feel like there's one that gets way more attention than the others,
Okay.
which is the spending all day, one day.
Oh heavens, for like meal prep.
Meal
for an entire
prepping for an
month?
entire
Okay.
week or an entire month with 15 different containers. I mean, you have your thing about containers. I have my thing about containers.
Yeah,
I don't like containers
get it.
of the same food, like 15 of them.
Yeah.
That just looks really awful and boring to me. But hey, if it's your jam and it keeps you where you need to be, then
That's just it.
Go nuts.
Yep.
But the 2 schools of thought are, you spend all day and you prep for an entire week, or the other school of thought is you spend a little bit of time every day prepping for the next day. And so either way, you're spending time.
Yes.
But how you spend that time, again, is important. Are you spending it dedicated to specifically, really laying everything out really methodically and quickly? Or are you kind of getting distracted and squirrel? I mean, the other day I was trying to make something. I was really, they say you can't actually multitask. Did you know that?
Yes.
That
Yeah.
supposedly,
your
like,
brain
multitasking isn't a thing.
Well, you can flip between 2 trains of thought quickly.
Right.
But you can't actually, scientifically, you cannot multitask.
Yeah, I learned that. I learned that because this was me trying to be Wonder Woman. I was cooking dinner. I was prepping dinner for the next day's crock pot.
Oh, good heavens.
My son just started football, and eating in the morning is not his favorite thing. But going into football practice for 3 hours on
An empty stomach.
an empty
No.
stomach is not my favorite thing for him to do. And so we compromised, and I came up with these little things I was going to make, and they're not healthy. So I'm not going to tell you what they are, because he's going to football practice and he needs carbs and some fats.
Awesome.
And he's 14, so he can eat these delicious
And he's a
things.
beanpole, so he can.
And yeah,
Totally
he
get
will
away
blow
with it.
away in the wind. So we're trying to weigh him down a little bit, but they're very not healthy. But anyway, so I prepped those, and I've got those in the oven, and I hear my timer. I came down to my food storage to grab something, an ingredient. Timer goes off. I tell Alexa to stop the timer, and then I go, and I'm listening to a book.
Oh,
I was listening to a book too.
Freak. Already.
I told you I was trying to be Wonder Woman that day, and I was almost succeeding.
Oh my word.
And so I'm listening to my book, and I'm chopping, and my daughter comes and she goes, "What smells so good?" And I was like, and I had tripled the cook time of said item in the oven,
Oh no.
and it was legit black.
Oh my word.
I was like, yeah, well, those aren't going to work. We're going to throw them away. But
Never mind.
I was like, work smarter, not harder, Heather. Like, let's really focus on one thing and get it done, instead of, because now I get to redo.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention purchase more
Mhm.
food because I didn't have more
Mhm.
ingredients. So the meal prep thing is what I'm trying to get at. Find what works for you, but don't do them all at the same time. No.
There's a concept of time leveraging, and then there's a concept of trying to be Wonder Woman. They don't mean the same thing.
I can do it. And I told you I had 3 areas. The last one is scheduling your life ahead of time. Whether it's scheduling your meals,
Amen.
scheduling your workouts, scheduling your whole day, your outfits. I mean, seriously, like, figure out what you're going to wear the night before, like you did in elementary school. It will save your life. 6 a.m. is not the time to try and find matching socks.
No.
So if you plan stuff out ahead of time, if you spend the time wisely in the gym, wisely in the kitchen, you're going to have a way better shot at having that work life health balance all kind of come into play.
Yeah. And one of the things that I teach in my up and coming program, I've talked about it a little bit, but it's going to be more hashed out in detail when I actually get it up and going. I talk about the 5 P's of productivity and what that looks like. And I mean, you can go read up on time leveraging and time management and things. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how to really, in your space, be able to work harder, smarter, not harder. How can you turn all of this into a system? Because when it starts coming naturally, and I don't care if the system comes at 5 o'clock every afternoon, that this is when I sit down and plan it. Or if you create a system for, here's monthly, this is what I'm going to do, and then weekly, and then daily. And then, I mean, if you really want to micro versus macro it, do it. It's whatever works for you. But if we can create a system and that process, that's one of the 5 P's, is a process for all of this so that you are held accountable. I mean, the 2 things you talked about, 3, mine are a little bit more big picture and not so specific, but there are 2 things that you need in order to work smarter, not harder in your space. And that is that you need a system and you need discipline. But discipline is kind of a 2-edged sword. I love this. So if you look at what you want to get done, say, these are my stones that I'm putting in my jar first. And then here are my pebbles, and here's my sand. So I'm brain dumping. Here's my brain dump. These are my priorities. Okay. I'm going to put this into a system of, this is what I'm going to do when. This is how it's going to work. This is how it's going to, and so, we can talk more in depth on that at another time. But so then you kind of fill in around those things. And that's what we call a system. It's a method of doing something consistently over and over again so that it works for you. That's a system.
I like it.
Now you have to have discipline to maintain that system. That means you have to promise yourself that you're going to do this. This system isn't going to run itself. It can start working like a well-oiled machine if you invest the discipline into starting the system. Now, that discipline can also turn that system into the disciplinarian.
Hmm.
So now you don't, so look at it from the perspective of, even your kids.
Mm-hmm.
You say, okay, I'm going to create a system. So like right now, you bought all of the same colored towels for all of your entire family because it went with the color scheme in your house. And you put all the towels in there, and every single day you find wet towels on the floor in the bathroom.
Story of my life.
And then what do you hear? Whose towels are these? Not mine, not mine. I'm out there. They're so-and-so's. They're so-and-so's. It's not mine. Like there's never any ownership for those towels. Say, okay, this is broken. So I'm going to come up with a system, meaning that every child in my house gets a different color towel. Like, there goes my color scheme in the bathroom. Who cares? I don't care how it looks. Okay, there goes my vanity. I'm after performance here.
Yeah.
I want to know whose towel keeps ending up on the floor. But now all of a sudden, the red towel keeps ending up on the floor. Well, that's Joey's towel. So every day I can come in and say, Joey, there's a red towel on the floor. Now, I'm not the disciplinarian. I'm not, whose towel is this? How come you kids never, you always, and you're destroying a relationship with your kids over a freaking towel.
Ooh.
But if you implement a system and have the discipline enough to maintain it, then the system plus discipline turns into the disciplinarian, and you are all of a sudden emotionally detached from this process. And so your emotion can be dumped into your relationships. Now, all of a sudden, the red towel is on the floor. You're not emotional about this. You just stated the system. The red towel is on the floor. The system states the red towel needs to be hung up, and Joey owns the red towel. Therefore, Joey knows that he is responsible for picking up the red towel and hanging it up.
Yes.
And there's no screaming. There's no arguing. The same thing can happen for you. Okay, this is the discipline that I am putting into my system that now becomes the disciplinarian for me. That means when somebody says, hey, can you babysit Johnny and Susie on this night? Then you say, I'm sorry, I am already committed at that time. There's the disciplinarian. So you don't have to give an excuse. You don't have to give apologies. You don't.
Perfect.
My schedule is already full at that time.
Right.
So your dedication to your system becomes the disciplinarian that you need to stay on track and on schedule and do everything that you need to do to make sure those rocks get put in the jar first, not the sand.
Love it.
So create a system, have the discipline to follow the system, and it will turn into the disciplinarian for you to maintain that system and that structure.
Oh, those are some beautiful
goosebumps
nuggets of information. Well, now it makes me think I'm gonna
like
color code my everything. Yeah. Then it's not whose cup is this or whose plate is this or anything. It's just
one of the best things I ever did is, when your kids get old enough that they can get their own drinks and all of a sudden there are 5,000 cups on the counter.
My fridge right now has 3 or 4 cups of I don't know what in there.
So I went to a color-coded cup system. So my kids each had their own cup, but they would drop it or they would put it in the dishwasher after they would use it. And so it was a good system, but it was kind of bugging me. But for Easter, we weren't doing sugar that Easter. So instead of giving candy, I needed another idea. So I had a friend. My family was big into Harry Potter at the time. So I had a friend create mugs, like those thermoses, for each house of Hogwarts, and we each got our house in a mug.
Perfect.
But it just so happened that all of us are in a different house from Hogwarts. So, and then my husband got just the generic, Hogwarts crest. So we each have our own Hogwarts mugs. But now my kids don't want to put it in the dishwasher. They want to keep using it, and it keeps the water cold. And they use it. And then I added one step onto it. I put coasters on the counter where the mugs go. So instead of them wandering around the house, where did my mug go? Or all over the countertop. Yeah. It's okay. Everybody has a color-coded mug system, color-coded mug. But now this is where it belongs.
This is its home.
And it goes on the coaster, and I just put an initial on the coaster for who's, or you could do it by age or who came first. So anyway.
If only we could color code chip bags. That's the other one.
Chip clips.
She's got an answer for
You
everything.
can color code chip clips.
You're a genius.
I know.
She's got I don't know. I should hire you or something.
Right? No.
When is your program opening? I'm going to need to be your first
sooner rather than
first
later.
sign up.
Come.
Make sure you tell me I will sign up because obviously I need more of these nuggets of information.
But all it like if you start thinking along those lines of I need a system, I need the discipline in the system to withhold it, and then that becomes the disciplinarian. So now all of a sudden I'm no longer yelling at my kids. You know, why are there 5,000 cups on the counter? And they're no longer, where did my cup go?
Yes.
You have a color and you know exactly where it goes. End of story. There's no motion, no fighting. It's the disciplinarian of the system instead of mom screaming and hollering.
So work smarter, not harder.
Yep.
I don't even think that you need homework for that. Just do it.
Just do it. Find something to do and go do it this week.
Yep.
And then share your success with us. If this episode has resonated with you, share it. Share it with somebody else who needs to hear this. Make sure you click subscribe so that you get all of our goodness every week.
Yes.
And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye.